Hi there everybody. For the first lecture, I choose a very simple scenario, defining macros and related commands. For each scenario, I provide you a file like this, which includes some tasks. You have to do the tasks. I do the task first, and you should do it in your practices. And after that, you could check your work with mine. I write the commands after the tasks, but before you use these commands, please do your tasks yourself and then check your configurations and verifications with mine. For today's, I want to show you how to define a macro for selecting interfaces ranges, and after that manipulating some interfaces. Working with interfaces could be a daily basis work for every network administrators. You have to configure the interfaces. I'm sure all of you know how to configure interfaces and how to select them. But just for review, when you want to select an interface, you go to global configuration mode and then issue the command interface. And after that, you have to specify the type of your interface and the number of your interface. Type means the type of your interface. It is an Ethernet, it is a serial interface, it is an ATM interface, or any other types of interfaces. And the number shows that this particular interface is number 1, 2, 3 among the same type. For Ethernet, which is our topic, during the years, technology has changes and the speeds are changed and become faster and faster. And when we want to refer to a special type of interfaces, we have to know that. For 10 megabit interfaces, we refer to them as Ethernet. We all know that Ethernet is the name of the family, but in command prompt and after interface, it means 10 megabit per second interfaces. After that, we have 100 megabits per second, and we refer them as fast Ethernets. Then gigabit Ethernet for 1 gigabit per second interfaces, or 1000 megabits per second. After that, we have 10 gigabit per second interfaces, and we call them 10 gigabit Ethernets. You know that there are faster interfaces such as 40 gigabits and 100 gigabits per second. But as Cisco says that 40 gigabits per second and 100 gigabits per second interfaces are beyond the scope of CCNP switch exam. Now we want to mention the number. Mentioning the number has a structure. The structure is this: member, module, and number. Depend on your platform, you may have one of these numbers or 3 of them. For simple devices, you may have only the number. For example, Ethernet 0. For some switches or routers, you may have the module and the number. For example, for switches 0/1. And for high-end switches or routers, you have the 3 of them. Fast Ethernet 1/0/1. So you may have one number, you may have module and number, you may have the member, module, and number based on your platform. If you want to know that the type of the interfaces which are installed on your device, you have to issue some show commands such as show running config, show interfaces status, or show interfaces, and see what are the types of the interfaces which are installed on your device and how about the numbers. Okay, now if you want to select a range of interfaces, for example, you want to do the same configuration on your first 8 interfaces on a switch, you could select one by one. Fast Ethernet 0/1, 0/2, 0/3 through 8. But professionals use the interface range command. You say interface range and, for example, fast Ethernet 0/1-3, and you could extend it with comma and select other interfaces in the same command. For example, 1/0/1 through 3 and gigabits 1/1 through 10 and blah blah blah. But what would you do if you want to select these interfaces commonly in your daily basis works? If you want to write these parameters each time, it could be very time consuming and awful for you. In these situations, Cisco offers us defining a macro. By defining a macro, you select a word for your chooses interfaces. And anytime you want to refer to these interfaces, you just say their names. And we want to practice this. So for this scenario, first, we want to define a macro for selecting interfaces range 1/0 through 3. And after that, we want to select them with this macro. We want to write description, we want to change the speed and the duplex, and finally we want to verify our configuration. Let's do our today's mission. For today's mission, I want to use Ether switch routers in GNS3. If you are not familiar with Ether switch routers and how to emulate them in GNS3, you could refer to my other course in Udemy, which is called Cisco Labs with Advanced GNS3 Features. I think it's video number or lecture number 10. You could use it for emulating an Ether switch router in GNS3. I put this router here, start it, and connect to its console and waiting until this device brings up. Now the device is ready for configuration. To define a macro, you have to go to global configuration mode, and after that issue the command define and interface range and the name of your interface range. I call this IT staff. We assume that these interfaces are connected to IT staff members' computers. And finally, choose the related interfaces, which was 1/0 through 3 for our scenario. Now, if you want to choose these defined word for your selection interfaces, you have to use interface range macro IT staff. It's very, very easy. You define it with define command, define interface range, the name and the interfaces, and for choosing that, you issue the command interface range macro and the name of your macro. And now we have these interfaces ready for configuration. The second step was writing description. Writing descriptions will very useful for maintaining and troubleshooting devices, especially in complex networks which are maintained by different engineers, and when one engineer change the network and connect an interface, for example, to a new customer, and if the engineer does not write the descriptions on the interface, the next one may confuse about the connection of these interfaces, and this makes some problems for maintaining and troubleshooting devices. So I always advise the engineers to write descriptions on interfaces, even a short one. It could be very helpful. You know that we write descriptions with the command description, and after that the desired description. For example, connected to IT staff computers, or any descriptions you want. To see the descriptions you have written, there are many commands. You could use show running configs or show interfaces status, but I think the best one could be show interfaces description. It could be very helpful for you. You see that on fast Ethernet 1/0, the description is like this through 3 because I select the interface range and issue the command on there. Also, you could use show interfaces status, but since the column is not as large enough for some descriptions like mine, some of them may trim and you could not see the complete text. And show running config could be helpful too. You see the descriptions on interfaces like this, but I think that this could be very helpful than any other commands for seeing the descriptions. Our next task is changing the duplex and the speed. When you issue the command show interfaces status, you see two columns here, duplex and speed. Both of them are in auto mode. It means that this device is ready for negotiation about the duplex and the speed. You see that the type of this interface is 10 or 100 base tx. It means that this interface could work with 10 megabits per second or 100 megabits per second and could negotiate this speed with the other side. Duplex could be full duplex, which means that both sides could send the traffic simultaneously, and half duplex is a two-way connection which at any time only one of the sides could send the traffic. When one side sends traffic, the other side should be wait until it's finished its work and vice versa. But if you issue the command speed or duplex on the interfaces, you say to the device that you have to work with these configurations and there is no negotiations. So go to global configuration mode, select my interface range with the micro IT staff. Remember that names are case sensitive in Cisco iOS, and anytime you want to use names, remember this rule. Now I change the speed to 100 and change the duplex to full for these interfaces. Now if I issue the command show interfaces status again, you will see that the duplex is full and the speed is 100 because I told the device to do that, but the other interfaces are still in auto mode. Unfortunately, I could not show the consequences of issuing the speed and the duplex command because GNS3 did not cooperate me in this way. At least mine is that maybe if you issue the commands you could see the desired consequences. But I just want to emphasize that to remember the rule. If you issue the commands speed and the duplex, you enforce the device to work with these configurations, and your interface will bring up with these configurations or do not bring up at all. If the other side listen to me and work with these parameters, we will bring up on this interface, otherwise won't. Okay, to wrap up today's lecture, let's review our tasks again. We define a micro, we define configuration command, we select this interface with interface range macro and the name of the micro command. We write description on these interfaces with description command. We change the speed and the duplex of our interfaces with speed and duplex command. And we verify our configurations with show interfaces status and show interfaces description command. I hope this lecture helps you to improve your knowledge, and see you in the next lectures.